Hey, what's up, J-Bro?
How's it going, man?
Best day ever. How are you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good.
All right, mic check passes. I promise we'll get more audience members than these three, but welcome early birds, Marley, H Payne, Ron. Okay, sweet. We just did the notification. J-Bro, we're gonna get Lo-Fi Girl up here. Just play a little bit of elevator music for a couple minutes while we wait for folks to trickle in.
Sounds good.
Thanks for joining. Looking forward to diving into this with you.
Absolutely.
Lo-Fi radio. Gotta love it. All right, just pinged everybody in the Discord, so hopefully we'll see a few more foxes showing up. What's up, Nealon? Is it Nealian? Hey, dude.
Yeah, that works.
Okay, sweet. All right, let's go ahead and get the party started. GM everybody, GM Magic Frog, GM Nealian, GM Foxes. Looking forward to discussing this proposal. Thank you, Nealian and J-Ro, for bringing this proposal to us. So, yeah, have you guys done a DAO community call before, or is this your first one?
Yeah, it's the first one.
First one.
Awesome. Well, it's going to be a great first. Typically, the way we do these is we'll start out with like a brief intro. You guys can give some background on this proposal that you posted to the forum, and then we'll kind of just go into moderated Q&A. I got some questions in my back pocket, and we'll open it up to anyone in the community to post a question in the stage channel or raise their hand and come up on stage. Can you guys see that text channel, by the way, right above the stage? Yes. J-Ro and Nealian? Okay, cool. So yeah, keep your eyes on there. People might be dropping comments and questions in there throughout the chat.
Gotcha.
All right, without further ado, we're all here to discuss this proposal from Magic Frog and Nealian on creating a ShapeShift DAO documentary film. Very interesting proposal, and there's been some great discussion in the forum so far, and there's enough interest where we at least want to explore this further. So looking forward to hearing from the proposal creators themselves on all of the details and answering any questions from the community to decide whether this is something we want to continue exploring or move forward with. So to start, I would love for each of you guys just to kind of introduce yourself, who you are, why we're here, what you do. Nealian, do you want to start off?
Jeremiah can go first.
Cool.
I got food in my mouth.
Yeah, I'm going to grab some food in a minute too. Yeah, so my name is Jeremiah Rounds. I've been working in the film industry for about, probably almost 20 years now. just produced a documentary film. It's getting distribution, working out the deals right now. And yeah, Neil contacted me to kind of talk about the possibility of a documentary. This is kind of in line with some previous work that we've done. So we thought it'd be a good chance to kind of further the landscape and knowledge on DAOs in general and on ShapeShift more specifically. Yeah, so that's kind of, I'm actually on set right now, so we're on a break.
Right on.
So
Hey,
yeah,
everybody. My
Hey,
name's
Neil.
Neil. I've been working with Jeremiah for over 20 years on different creative projects. We have a background in journalism and web design and stuff like that. I've helped people create networks that expose alternative and decentralized ideas to people since about 2013. And I was heavily invested in different ICOs when I ran into ShapeShift, the centralized version of ShapeShift. And I've been following the little ride that we've been on since we've turned into a DAO. I went through the liquidity version 1, version 2, and made a good income during COVID. And I'm excited to document the historical undertaking that we're underway right now. It's definitely like if you've all read the proposal and read through the comments, lots of great ideas spawned from the comments. But I am fascinated with making a historical record of what we're doing right now because I think it's astronomically crazy and cool.
That's awesome. I really appreciate you guys putting this proposal forth, and I just want to highlight how this is one of my favorite things about DAOs is the power of the community. And this is a perfect example of community members who have skills, unique skills that could potentially add value to the DAO. And I appreciate you guys just taking initiative and putting up a proposal for your vision for how you guys could support the community with your unique skills. Love to see it.
awesome. Yeah, thank you for having us.
So why don't we go ahead and give an overview of the proposal to the community for those who haven't read it or just need to be refreshed.
Yeah, cool. So the basic idea is to create a full feature-length documentary on the subject of DAO decentralization in general, what that means. A lot of people aren't even familiar with it. It's kind of it's obviously a new idea. It's something that hasn't really been explored a lot. And as filmmakers, we think that film is probably the best way to get people excited about things. You could look at documentaries like Super Size Me and Blackfish, things like that, that actually changed how businesses were run, changed the nationwide and worldwide viewpoints of what those things are, how they respond to those things. Movies have a way of doing that nothing else really touches. So we think it's a great way to do that. And the idea is that we've created a budget and the proposal for that. And the idea is that we'll spend, most documentaries take about a year at least to complete. The one that I just finished it was on the sports card industry and the rise in values. And during COVID, there was a big spike in value in sports memorabilia and stuff like that. People revisiting their youth and investing in these things. So I've kind of got a background already in this type of documentary. And then Neil's more familiar with the more technical aspects of it. So the idea is to create a documentary, do our research, go out, get interviews. There's basically 3 stages to production. There's pre-production, which is the planning stage, renting all the equipment, planning all the travel, hiring all the necessary people, and then production is when you actually start shooting. So that's when you go on the road and fly to locations, do all that kind of stuff, filming, audio, all that. And then post-production, which is actually the longest phase generally, especially in documentaries, where you're editing, doing color correction, getting stock footage, creating animations and graphics and things like that. And then creating a final product, which you then take to distributors And we covered that kind of in the discussion of how that works. There's a couple different ways of doing it. You can do it with self-distribution, which is the cheapest, but it's also the most time-consuming and doesn't get you generally as wide of an audience. Although with social media and things like that, it's expanding the reach on that. But the method that I usually use has been successful for us is film markets. So there are a few major film markets around the world. There's the American Film Market, which happens at the end of October, beginning of November each year, and that's in Santa Monica. And then there's the Cannes Film Festival. They have a film market there that's kind of the big worldwide. And then there's also a European film market. And those are kind of the three big ones. There are other smaller ones, but basically all the big distributors are at those ones. And so the way that works is you can come in with a completed film, along with all your numbers and everything and all your paperwork and all that kind of stuff. And you meet with distributors, kind of discuss the film, and then you get offers based on how they think they can distribute it, whether that's through theaters, which in documentaries is not as common, especially after COVID. Theaters tend to want, things with people with capes or explosions, that kind of stuff. Put more butts in the seats, as they say. And then, but there's also a lot of other, especially with streaming, that's a huge opportunity now. So there's different types of streaming. There's the, Netflix and Hulu and those type of ones, and then there's the HBO Max and Apple and things like that that are kind of have their own content. And then there's the on-demand. So there's the on-demand ones, and then there's also the paid-for ones, which is more like Vudu and Tubi and things like that. And then there's ad-supported as well, which is actually more, I think Tubi is more like that. And then there's airlines, there's direct-to-video, there's rentals, there's TV. So at these film markets, when you're meeting with a sales agent, they kind of discuss what the options are and kind of decide which countries it'll be most popular in, where they can get the best financial return on that and the widest audience possible. And all of this takes from start to finish, from concept, script writing, planning, all that, and then till the end of the period where it's created. Generally takes about a year. I think we had in our proposals, it's looking like it's going to be maybe about 14 months. And then the distribution phase happens and then it goes out. And that's kind of based on the distributors, when they think their popular times are for release. If there's going to be, some event that it makes sense to coincide with, or if they've got competing, like similar types of movies that they want to put out either at the same time or separated. That all kind of happens at the end. And yeah. So I guess that's kind of the big overview of the project, is that it's a big undertaking, but it's something we've done many times before, and we're confident that we can deliver within the budget.
Absolutely. Hey, I had something to add to that. There is also a big rising community of decentralized streaming platforms also, like Ben Swan has Sovereign Media, which was previously called Isagoria, and a lot of other startups there that we could take advantage of, that with a community is already plugged into the decentralized idea. But somebody mentioned in the comments of the proposal splitting maybe or finding alternate DAOs or coexisting DAOs that would want to be featured in the documentary. Like me, I'm all into ShapeShift. I use a keep key, and I pretty much build out of all my other cryptocurrencies and put them all into Fox and ShapeShift. So I'm just a diehard guy that just wants
Fox
to make sure
maximalist.
that Fox gets its day, its daytime. So but
Yeah.
I would like people to suggest that if there are other DAOs that are of a developed nature that you guys would suggest we cover as well as ShapeShift.
Yeah, let's dive into that. So first of all, just thank you for that really awesome overview of the proposal and kind of the whole documentary making process. It's really clear that you guys have a really good grasp and a lot of experience with it, and it's just interesting to kind of hear about all the behind the scenes work that goes into it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's been a really good discussion about the proposal in the forum, and a lot of the feedback was was that, oh, this is a cool idea, but the budget is expensive. Is this really, should we be investing a 450K of the DAO's budget or treasury into this when there's other important things that we could spend that money on? So yeah, I thought it was a really interesting idea to potentially, instead of to be clear, it's $450,000 that's requested to move forward with this and make this movie. I also, on that note, I wanted to ask, are there, you guys had, the total budget would be, I think, 2 to 3 million, right? I think what you mentioned in your proposal.
No. So that was the 450,000 would be start to finish, complete the documentary with all the necessary legal stuff and all the extra footage you need to buy, music, all that stuff, start to finish. So that is the documentary budget in itself. Other people had mentioned that there is opportunity for basically money making. So our kind of proposal suggested that this is good for us on two fronts. One, it furthers knowledge, and two, you can make financial gain off of it. So some people were like, well, documentary, that's, it seems like a lot of money to invest with the possibility of not a huge return on it. And I kind of responded back that yes, that is true. There is basically another way of looking at it is there's two reasons to do it. One is to spread knowledge, and two is to make money. If you're just interested in making money, there are better ways to do it. Documentaries can be they're one of the top return on investment type of movies because they're usually sub $1 million. Anything under 3 million is considered low budget. So as low budget movies go, documentaries can be very successful and make a huge return on their investment. But you have to have the market there, and you have to have viewers that support it. So those types of documentaries often have like Morgan Freeman narrating it, and cute fuzzy animals and things like that, things that are easy to sell. So this is more of an informative one. So the potential for monetary gain is not as certain as something like that. So if the goal of investing in a movie in general is to make money off of it, then there are other ways that can be implemented. And so that was what the $1 million type stuff is, so that if you wanted to just focus on the money making and not really worry about the learning and the spreading of the knowledge, then there are easier ways to make money making movies, and those are generally with the method that we've discussed in length for many years, and I've been very close to getting funding for it several times, is to create a slate of movies. So it's almost like a hedge fund in film, because statistically, you make one movie, the timing's right, you make a huge return on it. The timing's not right for whatever reason, a catastrophe hits, a competing thing comes out, whatever, it may not be as successful as you'd like. But with a slate of movies, you put in, make a quality movie 10 times, you're going to make your return on it just based on statistically, this is how often a movie will either lose money, break even, or be a runaway success. So that's kind of the idea of that, is that if that's the goal, is just to make money and invest in a slate of movies, then that's where the more money will be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, got it. Appreciate the insights and the transparency there. So it seems like there's
I think definitely. Go ahead. Sorry. No, go ahead, please.
It sounds like there's a possibility to recoup some of this investment, but the primary motive for this wouldn't be a profit-making endeavor. More so, it's about getting exposure around ShapeShift and around the DAO, but with the possibility of still recouping some of that investment. And who knows? Hopefully, there's always that chance that we go viral, right? And it does end up being the best of both worlds and becoming a wildly successful endeavor. But there's a lot of risk around there and a lot of uncertainty. So, but I'm glad you guys have a lot of experience navigating that.
We could definitely have a production that ends up being, in retrospect, a go-to source for certain historical things that have happened and the future that's yet to come with ShapeShift. I want people to interact with it more, to understand it more, and to grow the user base.
Yeah.
But somebody did mention in the comments again something about tokenizing a fund for a film company. And I can't remember the details of it, but it was, I don't have my notes in front of me, but it was the idea of making a subsidiary company that would essentially fund a slate of movies that aren't necessarily the same documentary that we're trying to make here after the fact, but something that would pretty much a DAO movie studio that's tokenized, and the users or the people who have stake in that would be able to choose what movies get made and what movies don't get made. That was kind of like a side topic that was discussed inside the comments, but I thought that was a golden idea because nobody's ever thought of anything like that yet.
Yeah, that is a really cool idea. I do know, I'm remembering there was this Ethereum documentary that got crowdfunded last year. I don't know if you guys saw that on Mirror, and they raised about like $2 million. And I feel like it was people just donating to making the documentary happen because they knew it'd be good for Ethereum. But that's definitely an interesting avenue that we can explore, and potentially even letting people, taking the proceeds from the film and giving that to the DAO, to the token holders. But I like the comment on the proposal to potentially just split the cost. I think that's another avenue worth exploring. So the initial investment proposed would be $450,000. There were some comments in the forum that it's a cool idea, but that's a large investment. And another option is to potentially find a couple other DAOs to partner with on this. I was thinking Gitcoin, because they're also in Colorado and kind of a well-known DAO that's really pioneering a lot. And might be
Say that
interesting.
again. Say the name one more time.
Gitcoin.
Gitcoin. Okay.
And that's just one idea. I was thinking not only could that help us decrease the costs, but it might even result in a more interesting and compelling documentary. And now we also have the support from these other communities to help, promote it. And yeah, so I did like that as another option for potentially decreasing the cost if we do like this documentary idea, but think that it's just a little bit too expensive for now.
So please, people, suggest other DAOs, and I will investigate them and look into them. But if anybody has any ideas after this meeting, please add them to the comments of the proposal.
Awesome. Thank you, Neil. All right, I want to circle back to some questions we've got from the audience. PTT asks, so there's a common joke that Netflix will greenlight anything that's brought to them as long as it's not a blatant ripoff. I love that joke, by the way. The question is, how come we don't go straight to Netflix with this pitch to try and get funding for this?
Cool, so I'll handle that. Netflix pretty much has changed in the last 2 years, has changed their methodology, and they do not, they don't buy anymore, really, unless it's like a blockbuster type thing, or it's got big name talent, things like that. Amazon shut down their documentary side completely, and Netflix is mainly only doing, they become a studio, essentially. So they make their own movies now. If they get an idea that they think is great, they'll just make it. They invested, I think, something crazy like $50 billion or something like that into their production fund. So they are no longer really interested. The documentary that we just made did go before Netflix, which is we didn't think was going to happen, but they managed to get it. So we had a meeting with them. They said they love the idea, but they've already got something that they're developing that's too similar to what we were doing to make sense to release both of them. But they wished us well and sent us on our way. So Netflix used to be a big source for independent film, but now they're just making their own stuff. They've got all the algorithms. They know what people watch. They know when they turn off. They know what else they watch. And so they can just fine tune their content to match what they know that their viewers will watch. They've been doing a pretty good job of it. So Netflix, Amazon, like I said, is not even accepting documentaries anymore. They pretty much shut down that whole side of it. So the landscape has changed a little bit since COVID hit. Really, that's when it started to change.
Makes sense. Well, I guess we're stuck with Hulu then. Just kidding. I did see Arwen actually said he doesn't necessarily see Netflix as relevant. Maybe Discovery Channel or National Geographic. Do they buy historical content, or would they be potential distribution avenues?
They are potential. It's kind of, they have to see the value in it. So most of these places are not interested in investing in ideas. If they have ideas, they'll make it themselves. All of the big companies have their own production arms. So anyone that's big is going to make their own documentary if they think it's worth it. So it becomes down to, if you make something that's quality and they see it, then they can decide maybe there is a place for it on our platform, and it's cheaper to just buy it than it is to produce it themselves. It's already there. They don't want anybody else to compete with it, they think it's great, then they'll put it on there. The other thing about Netflix too, which is again probably not an issue for us, but in general, they don't pay for residuals. They give you a flat fee, and that's all you'll ever get from it. It may be their most popular thing on there, but they're going to give you, I think it's something like 20%. So whatever the budget is plus 20%, that's all you'll ever see from it. With some of the other streaming platforms, theatrical, DVD, all things like that, they do residuals so that you'll get what's called a minimum guarantee, which means if they decide to buy it, they'll give you an advance. And then once that advance catches up to what they actually sell, then they'll give you a portion of the profits on that. So that's
Jerry,
kind of
could you explain to them how the process is when something is when something's bought from them? What is the process of paying back investors and stuff from the filmmaker's side of things? Explain that to them.
Right, yeah. So essentially, a rule of thumb is that a movie has to make 3 times what it costs to make before the filmmakers see a profit. So that's because there are different pools that have to get paid out of it. So the filmmakers would get paid.
Sorry, Matt.
You were losing you.
Did I cut out?
Yep, we hear you now.
We can hear you now.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I got a call. I just denied it. So when a movie gets made, there is usually investors, which in this case would be the DAO or multiple DAOs, depending on how it's funded. And then there are the filmmakers, which are the producers, the actors, any of the talent that get portions of profit. Like here, Tom Cruise gets, X amount of the profits in addition to his fee, stuff like that. So usually that's a way of enticing talent to show up, is to say, hey, we'll pay you this much to be in the movie, and then you get a % of the profits from it. So the movie itself is kind of split. There's a 50-50 split between the film producers, which includes all the talent that's promised a portion of it, and then the investors. And then in addition to that, there is the distribution. So they get paid, the theaters get paid, and those percentages vary based on the deal you get. But the money comes in, it's split between the distributors and whatever channels it goes through. Then it goes to the movie itself, and then that's a 50-50 split between the investors and the producers. So, and there's a number of ways you can do that. Usually it's the investors get a portion back. It's like a 90-10 split. So you can do it that way, where it's starting from day one of profits, 90% of it goes to the producers until they've made 110% back of their investment, and 10% goes to the 90% goes to the investors until 110% of the profit comes back. 10% goes to the producers during that. Once they make that 110% profit, then it flips, and then the producers get 90% and the investors get 10%. Then once that's even, then it's a 50-50 split from then on. So that's kind of a typical deal. Or it can be 100% profit to the investors until that mile mark, and then it flips. So either way, it's an even split, but it can be determined how that split happens.
Cool. And if you guys, there's a lot of great numbers there. If you could post that in the forum, I think that'd be helpful for us to understand what the payback would look like. Yeah,
for sure. I can write something up for that later.
Awesome, thank you. So we've talked a lot about kind of the how and the what. I'm curious to touch back on just the why. Why do you guys think that we should produce a documentary?
Well, I think Neil touched a big portion of what he's interested in is getting more people interested. I think for me, what I find most exciting and what could be cool as a documentary is this whole concept of the DAO. Like, that is something that's never really happened in human history. It's always been, there's someone at the top, and if you're lucky, the money trickles down, the decisions trickle down, and if you work hard enough, maybe you can get a say in it someday after you've been there for X amount of years. With a DAO, it's decentralized. There's a whole thing that I think people don't even know about. And I think that's one of the big barriers to crypto. to any of these type of organizations is that people don't understand that that's even a reality now. Like they've never been had it explained to them. Like even when I talk to people about cryptocurrency, like, oh man, it sounds really interesting, but I don't understand it, so I'm not going to do it. And I think this is something that can kind of break that barrier and say, look, this is
So they don't just see it in terms of currency either. They
yeah,
see contracts. They see the ledgering of information, and I mean, with
yeah,
NTFs are coming along, we got so many different
yeah.
fronts.
It
Like I've
includes
been a big
blockchain as well.
ICO guy, initial coin offerings, and I've invested in companies and supported companies that I agree with and that I support since that concept has kind of been expanding.
Well said.
Yeah,
I agree. I think you guys did a really great job in the forum post, kind of explaining the power of film, the power of documentaries to change public perspective. And I think you make really good points that this is something that is really fascinating and interesting and potentially, world changing. But it isn't being documented, and there isn't a lot of good content out there, and people are hungry for this type of content. So I know there's a lot of uncertainty and stuff, but I do think that we have the potential to get just a lot of exposure around the DAO movement, around ShapeShift and Fox specifically. And I think, Neelian, you made a really good point too. I think that if the future plays out like we're anticipating it might, then this could go down in history as the film that documents this transition. And
It puts it on the menu, man, for sure. It lets people be aware that it's an option on the table that they don't understand. I mean, a lot of people submit to centralism and tyranny in general because they're not exposed to alternate technologies, innovations that exist, and they're right there at grasp, and nobody knows that they're even there to take advantage of. Like to run a company from the bottom up in the fashion that a DAO allows us to do is paradigm shifting. Absolutely.
For sure. Yeah, and it reminds me, this is history in the making. It reminds me a little bit of the Kanye documentary that came out on Netflix, and it's funny that he knew he was going to be famous. He knew he was going to be big, so he started filming this documentary even before then. And then, years later, now it's like we can look back at this transition, at him becoming a star, and it's really interesting. I like to think that we might, if we move forward with this, we might find ourselves in a similar position.
Absolutely. I mean, me and Jeremiah have done frugal things in the past, and honestly, we've always been frugal in our filmmaking. But as we get into our 40s and we've dealt with the business so much, honestly, we want to do things right. We want to make it a puzzle piece that fits in with the market that's in place, and so it can get the most exposure. I would love to film anything that I can about this DAO personally, but I definitely want to do it right, and I want to do it with. It sounds like a lot of money, but actually, it's the minimum amount that we could possibly do the utmost professional documentary that we can with the technology and skills that we have.
Making a good documentary isn't cheap, and if we're going to do it, we want to do it right. We don't want to spend half the money to come up with a half-baked documentary that no one's going to want to watch.
Right,
So,
it's too important. Like I've spent years of my life following the concepts of liberty and interviewing different people in different schools of thought. And honestly, I wish I would have gone this route with it more instead of getting in my van and traveling across the country and trying to make something that way. It seems more in tune with my soul, the way I want things to be done. But Jeremiah has experience with the networks, with the markets, and I'm more of a technical behind the camera kind of guy. I'm more of a filmmaker production side guy. And Jeremiah is a business guru when it comes to all three aspects of production, which is post-production or pre-production, post-production, production, so forth.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm curious, would you use any of the content that we've been recording just through the public community calls we've been having? I think some of the best documentaries I've ever seen, oftentimes one of the reasons it's such a good documentary is that the people were filming a lot of the content for a while. Like the devil and Daniel Johnston, he was filming his whole life from the moment he was a kid, and then he became famous, and it's like, oh wow, we have all of this amazing footage of him growing up. Would you guys leverage a lot of the content that we've been producing internally?
Yeah, I think that's a definite possibility. I mean, it all comes down to story. Like that's what sells a movie is does it tell a compelling story? Are there interesting characters? And is it something that can capture people emotionally? And a lot of this stuff, it's a little more difficult because it's a movie. Like you want to see something, right? That's kind of it's a visual medium. So one of the ideas that I had for using archival stuff like this with even some of the text documents and then the audio recordings is to be able to animate it. I'm trying to think. There's a documentary recently that it wasn't very good. It was kind of weird, but they did that successfully. They used it was about a what was it called? I think it was like Exit the
Talking about the
Matrix.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about the Tender Swindler or something.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them out
Pretty
there.
much.
It's
They
a
made a whole
fairly
documentary out of
common
his text messages, pretty much.
yeah, but there's another one where they used like 911 footage. I mean, 911 audio recordings, and they used it to kind of recreate the scene, and they used kind of interesting animation and photography and stuff like that to kind of show what was happening as the call
Enhance.
went. Yeah, and so I think that's something that we would probably want to use for this is to use some sort of animation or even something cool like stop motion with photography, kind of like the old the Monty Python skits where they had uh, cutouts talking and stuff like that. Something like that might be cool for
To bring life to the old archives of endless text and
yeah,
what's transpired over the last year or so.
Yeah, I think
because
it
it's
makes a lot of sense.
difficult to just play audio over a black screen and expect people to stay on board for a while.
For sure, and it can make a lot of sense too because a lot of the community members are anonymous, right? So,
Exactly.
Yep, we see we've got a beard in the audience with the fox avatar, so it could be a cool way to bring them to life.
Yeah, exactly. Being able to animate avatars would be a really cool thing because you'd be able to basically see your persona on the screen without having to actually appear.
Super cool. I think the Anons would appreciate that. So,
Exactly. And that's one of the coolest things about a DAO in general is like you don't really need to expose yourself. Like if you're investing in something that maybe I don't know goes against another like it not really like you're competing against yourself, but if you're investing in something that's like that other people might see as kind of like outside your realm of expertise or realm of authority. In a DAO, you don't have to be like, yes, this is me. Here I am. I'm doing this weird thing that my corporate allies might not agree with. It's kind of cool that you can have decisions being made and money being spent and made, and all of that happens.
So pretty much, privacy kicks ass.
Yeah, exactly.
It reminds me of some of the documentaries where they have the person being interviewed like in the dark or wearing a mask, and they do like a voice changer.
Yeah, exactly. And you can do the same thing instead of using an animated avatar and then streaming. Like that's your username is whatever it is, and that's all that gets exposed. So
Totally.
cool.
Yeah, After Effects has gotten pretty powerful with being able to create these skeletons with like eyes and mouth and a nose, and then you can just record your face and then automatically animate the talking, which is so much better.
That is a really cool program. Yeah,
so cool.
When I was Animator.
a kid, I used to do animations as a kid, and it was making people talk was the hardest thing ever.
Yeah. Now they've got speech to text,
facial recognition.
And then, you can reenact it, and then you can animate the character just based on the audio. It'll parse it into syllables and create different pieces for
facial expressions, eyebrows. Yeah, all the good stuff.
Super cool. So on that note, how much time do you think it would take from the DAO itself? Like how many hours would the community need to dedicate to actually being interviewed and providing feedback on the script, all that stuff? And I know it's hard to estimate, but any information you can give there, I think will help us make a good decision on this.
That's a really hard thing to estimate. I can tell you some past experiences, what it's been like. I could give you the latest example from the documentary that I just produced. It's called Behind the Card, and like I said, it's about the sports card industry. And the guy behind it was someone who was super passionate about the industry. He was a collector himself, and he put together all the list of the people that we should talk to. His wife helped set up the interviews, contacted him directly, and I basically told him like I can make the film for you, but I can't write it for you because it's just not my area of expertise. And so he basically took about 2 months to come up with a rough script. It was just kind of like the basic story arc. It kind of tells you where do we start from and lead you from how does a piece of cardboard end up worth $5 million? Because that was at the time there was a Mickey Mantle card that sold for $5.2 million, and we were able to film that. And the guy that bought it. So finding that arc is going to be the first step. So I think that's where the community can really help us. Like, what are the most important milestones that you see? What are the most important
Figures,
the milestones, the big events that happen that change things? Once we've got those in place, then we can start forming a story around that. And then once that happens, then it becomes logistically, okay, cool. How do we actually get this stuff to photo in these places? So I think that can be anywhere from a couple months to 6 months. It kind of depends on the community involvement. It depends on if we ended up finding like an anchor character, like if there's one person that just changed everything and it's their story, then that becomes a little bit easier. You just get that interview first, and then fill in the blanks around it. So it's really can vary a lot.
like music, it's the bass line.
Yeah. So there's a lot of it kind of depends on the community involvement. It could be like we could start this up and say, cool, everybody give ideas, and then 10 people might put in really good context and why it makes sense, and then the next week could be like, cool, if we put this here, this here, this here, then that's a good basis to start with. What is it? And then we go to why is it important? And then we go to where is it going in the future? Well, now we've got our 3-act structure. We can put it into place and then just start filling in the gaps. Or it might take a really long time. It's kind of, it's within the budget to go either way, but that's the whole pre-production phase of it. It can be really quick or it can take a lot longer. But the more that is ironed out then, helps the production go on from there. Because once you've got that storyline, you know what you're getting in those interviews, and you know what archival footage you need to find. You know what animations you need, all that kind of stuff. So it's really about finding the compelling story that's going to draw their audience in, rather than let me be an informative, like this is a history type of thing. Those are kind of harder to get a broad audience involved. There's a place for those type of documentaries too. But
You're breaking up a little.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, sorry about that. I think this type of documentary, the important part is to get. It's not so much preaching to the choir. We don't want to tell people who are already into it what they already know, that they could Google and find out, or probably already know. It's more about getting those people who've heard of Bitcoin, have heard of NFTs, have maybe heard of DAOs, but really don't have an idea what it is. Kind of showing them why it's cool, how it's changing history, and why they should be interested in it. So,
and the fact that it's an ongoing story and that could change the narrative. But we have a lot of great minds. Like, even if everybody in this chat were to give their 2 cents, there would be plenty of content, a plethora of content to build a storyline out of with all these people.
I agree. Yeah, I think we've got so much good content and stories to tell, and such a engaged community that I'm confident we'd be able to give you guys the support necessary to keep things moving. And I'm curious though. I'm curious, I guess, would all the funding for this, assuming this proposal passes, would all the funding be transferred up front? And if so, what kind of, I guess, protection is in place to ensure that the film will get delivered? And like, I'm curious too, have you guys ever had a film that like halfway through shit hit the fan basically? And I'm curious about like the worst story for a documentary you filmed and kind of how you guys handled it.
Yeah, we actually do have a story of that. We were filming a documentary called Liberty, and while we were in the post-production phase, COVID hit and basically made everything that we had said previously just kind of not relevant anymore. I mean, it changed the world so much that if we had released the documentary as it was, it would have been irrelevant. People would have laughed at it because it just didn't make sense anymore. So yeah, I mean, and that was a self-funded one, so it was just pretty much us going, all right, well, I guess we
took the risk with our own money.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
Like yeah. It's so yes, there's a couple ways to do it. One is it can be milestones. So we can say, cool, we'll release X amount of dollars to accomplish this part of it. And then once that's completed, then the next portion can get released. That's pretty common with outside investors in general. For a normal movie, it's the money has to just be released in a lump sum. So like if we're going to make a kung fu movie, we need the money up front, because until we have the money in a what do you call it? Not necessarily even an escrow account where it can't be released until you've got the name actors signed on. At least it's verifiable that the money's there, because a lot of people won't sign on to it without knowing that the money's there.
Without that being there, yeah, as an anchor.
So basically, the money itself is the guarantee that it's going to happen, because once you've got the legal structure in place for that, there's bond completion and stuff like that that kind of says, yes, we've got the interest in it and it will go forward. If it doesn't, it's insured against that. It's harder to do with documentaries, but it is doable. But I think in this case, milestones would probably be a better route to take. So it would be cool once we've got the okay for it, release, I don't know, let's just say $50,000. And that would be enough to start us with the research, with collecting it, with creating the story. And
legal, the prospectus, all the legal, yeah.
Legal structure in place, all that kind of stuff. And then once that's completed, cool, now we're released another 50,000, and that will be for scheduling and planning. And then cool, that's been completed. Now we're released the 50,000, probably be closer to 100,000 more for the actual production, running the equipment, flying around, getting the recordings. Once that's completed and able to be reviewed, then it moves on to post-production, and the editing portion of it can be released, and then the animation portion can be released. You can do it like that, so that it's sequential, and you're not. I guess it's kind of like a if good faith is not seen that the progress is being made as expected, then the funds can be cut off and rerouted towards someone else. I've seen that happen before in not in a documentary, but in a low budget indie film, where the original producers got through the production, filmed it, and then were taking a long time in post, so then they brought in someone else. I think it was Lionsgate in that case, and Lionsgate provided their own post-production specialist.
Post-production team, yeah.
Yeah, so they added effects, they changed some stuff. I don't think they reshot anything, but sometimes that happens too. And then they released it based on their own criteria for what would make them successful. So it can kind of go either way. Again, it would be a community decision. Like, do you want to just pay it up front, know that the funds are in place and it's going forward? Obviously, in any case, we'd be able to produce, I don't know what you call that, like checkups where we would show progress reports, something like that.
Cool.
Yeah, or it could be milestone, either way.
I think both of those are good potential solutions. You're right. It's ultimately up to the community. And I think maybe you guys can help us by kind of proposing what you think you'd be comfortable with. And then we can kind of negotiate from there. But I think the milestones are a great way to kind of ensure that you guys aren't just going to run off with all the funding, and that we're progressively paying as work is delivered. A community member also.
I like that model the best. It seems like it keeps motivation good, and it keeps everybody on the DAO side of things at a trackable pace. It is something that they can follow and keep up with, and then see, like, almost as if they're achieving the milestones themselves also.
For sure.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of doing it, and I think it's, especially for this community, I think that's probably the smartest way to do it, and it's the most DAO way of doing it too, right? Like, I mean, having everybody, whether you understand necessarily all the technical aspects, if they're there to view and it's open and transparent, I think that's a really cool way of the community being involved. And at that stage, input can be given to you, like, oh, this is really good. This event just happened. Maybe we should allocate, another $10,000, $20,000 to go film this thing, because the community agrees it's a good thing that should be added to it. So that kind of stuff can happen too, which I think would be cool.
Mm-hmm. Are you guys familiar with token streams as well? The ability to lock up tokens and have them streamed over a time period. A community member suggested that in the stage chat as well. Disable your streams.
Oh, cool.
If you guys are open to that too, I think that would be an awesome thing to, I guess, propose as well, as maybe either milestones and a Sablier stream, or just a Sablier stream. Really open ideas there, but streams are a great way to ensure the funds are there. They're already, you can't start the stream without depositing the funds, and they will keep streaming every block until the end of the time, or unless the DAO decides to cancel it, which is an option.
No, I haven't heard of that. I think that's cool. I'll have to do some research into that, but I think that's beneficial on both sides, because it ensures that the money is there, so that we're not spending a bunch of time and then find out that, oh, actually the money's not really available, or it got allocated somewhere else, and then we have to stop, even though it might be, amazing so far, but now we can't finish it because the money got just.
Each milestone could be its own vote, you know what I mean, in progression.
Yeah, but having the money allocated up front, but not released all at once, I think is a great way of doing it, because that kind of meets both criteria. We know the money's there. We also know we're not going to get it until the milestones are seen and approved, and then they can move on to the next stage.
Awesome.
It might end up taking a little longer that way, depending on how we set it up, but I think that's a fair way of doing it.
Cool. And I think it'd be good for us to know. I could see it. Yeah, maybe paying up front for the milestones with the stream could work out. I don't know. I'm curious, but I'm glad that you guys are open to some flexibility there, so we can ensure this is a good win-win.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm super curious to hear how many people have seen some of the other documentaries you guys have filmed, and I'm really curious, how many people could we expect to see this documentary, assuming that we make a quality documentary? I know it's really hard to estimate, but maybe it could be helpful to hear pessimistic, worst case. Here's what we think might get. Realistic. Here's what we think is actually feasible, and then optimistic. If things go really well, how many people could we expect to see it?
Yeah. So I mean, it's enough intuitivity of demographics, that involvement will push it to another level. And so in a worst case scenario, what you've got is no major distributor wants to touch it, and you've got to go the self-distribution route. Then that's when you enact the community and say, cool, this is what we're doing. We're going to put it on a paid viewing on YouTube or some other platform. Here's the link. Everybody push it. We'll join in stuff like this, where we're talking to people directly. We'll push marketing. We'll do Instagram campaigns, whatever it takes to be able to everyone involved push that forward and then get it seen. So worst case scenario, we fall back on the community and rely on just word of mouth to transmit it, and then it's really as large as the community is. That's how many people will be able to push it to their audiences. Best case scenario,
it's definitely unparalleled, though. If you think about it, Jerry, it's unparalleled to the traditional structure of a marketing team, where you wouldn't have this many people with a vested interest to actively promote something. That's what the new, it's unprecedented the way it is set up, if we were to do it in this fashion.
Yeah, and that's the worst case scenario, is we rely on the people to send it out there, and then it's just how many views can we push based on everybody who's interested spreading out that knowledge. And that really just depends on how big the community is, how many people hear about it, how many people pass it on. Everybody who's on here could contact their local news station wherever they're at, and we can create a press release and release it and be like, this is a brand new documentary that's coming out, completely not even crowdfunded, but community organized, community funded, community.
Just explaining that itself explains something we want someone to know that they don't know already.
Yeah,
that in itself is what needs to be known, is that there's a new way of doing things in town.
Heck yeah, I think that's some really useful context, and I'm optimistic that we'd be able to get strong support from the community, ideally the community of some other DAOs if we partner with a couple other DAOs on this, and hopefully the support of the broader Ethereum community. It's hard for me to imagine if we came out with this full feature documentary about DAOs that features a couple other DAOs too, that it wouldn't make a big splash in the Ethereum community, and we'd at least get exposure to a lot of the Ethereans, which is still very valuable and can help us. If we're top of mind for a lot of the Ethereans early on in this whole DAO movement, then it can ensure that we're a top DAO as DAOs proliferate. So.
Yeah, and again, because of what this is, I mean, that might even push the value of the DAO in and of itself, just having that kind of exposure to, the world out there. Just this exists and we're doing it. That's enough to get some interest, and that might even accomplish one of the goals of increasing the participation and the value of the DAO itself. So,
Sure.
yeah, but as far as actual viewership, best case scenario is someone like Lionsgate picks it up and says, cool, we can market this. They spend $10 million marketing it, and it's on every billboard in the country. So the sky's the limit as far as what it can do. Realistically, it's going to be somewhere in between.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, we got about 5 minutes left. I got a few questions that I want to make sure we get to. This was brought up in the forum a couple times. What are your thoughts on like the full feature length documentary versus a docu-series? Curious to hear what the trade-offs there would be.
Yeah, so I've produced and directed a couple TV shows that have had nationwide distribution. One of them is the 900 series, and it's a documentary series about a shop in Las Vegas that only works on Porsches. So it's a half-hour-long TV show. The problem with a series is that in order to get wide exposure, you need a lot of episodes. Basically, to get good streaming deals for a series, they want lots of content. They want 3 seasons worth, essentially. So I think it's something like over 30. I can't remember if it's 32 or 36, but it's over 30 episodes they want. So even at a half hour, it's 30 times a half hour. You're talking about 15 hours of content, and it's doable, but it's hard to get that. And you have to come up with a format that it makes sense to string that out. So one way that could work is that you would have each episode be about a specific event that happened, like the invention of the internet, and then how did that affect spreading it out, and then how did Bitcoin, that was a big thing. Okay, and then you could do it that way. It's more expensive because instead of needing an hour and a half of content, now you need 15 hours of content. If you do it just like a limited series, really the only smart way to do that, in my opinion, people have done it other ways. Like you could do it on, you could do small 10-minute segments on YouTube, something like that. But just the potential for return is not as high because of the kind of time commitment that you need for it. So it's it increases every aspect of production. So the cost has to go up. And then it also, if you don't meet that 30 episode or whatever it is marker, then it limits who will even buy it, because some companies just aren't interested in anything unless they can stream it consistently. Like for TV, they need to know that they've got 3 years of viewership locked up in it. And so that's why it's kind of important for that. For independent streaming, you can do whatever you want. You could put it on YouTube and rely on views that way. But economically, it's difficult to make that work unless you've already. The people that have done that successfully tended to start out really small, build up an audience, and then once they've got the audience, then go into the next step and invest more into it, and then get more out of it. So that's the problem with episodic. It's just it takes so much content and so much time that unless you've got good financial backing, it's really hard to make that work. Whereas a one-off feature film, you can sell that in a ton of different ways. You can even go direct. Amazon has direct printing capabilities. So they print on demand Blu-ray and DVD now. So basically, you don't have to have any inventory. You just have the title up there on the website. People can order it, and when they do, one of the Amazon distribution centers will print one out and send it to them. So that kind of thing is a lot easier to do with a single film than it is to do with a series. And there's film festivals, stuff like that. You have to have just one thing there. So the variety of places you can put it is very different too.
Really great answer. I just want to say I really, really appreciate you guys putting this proposal up, taking the initiative there, and all of the knowledge and insights you guys have about this subject is so helpful. So really appreciate you guys making the proposal and taking the time to give us an overview and answer all the community's questions. I guess one last question so we can make sure we're moving this forward. I'm curious, I know you guys are working on another movie right now. When would you want to start working on this, and how soon would we need to make our decision to align with that timeline?
Well, this film wraps up in May, so the first couple of weeks of May. So I mean that's less than a month away. So as soon as this is done, I can hop off and work on it. But yeah, I think
I could dedicate my time to it also at that point in time.
Yeah. So basically, I don't think that they would go forward quicker than that anyway. I think a month is minimum of what it'll take to go through, the community and work out the details and come up with a good solid plan for it. So early a month, and then how long it would take beyond that will just depend on the community and what people decide as far as the things we discussed today, like what makes the most sense. But yeah, once it's started, once the money's there, it's go time. So it's just once the money's in place, we know we can start. Then we can start doing all the planning and start doing all the pre-production process.
Well, that sounds like a decent timeline. Our governance process, we probably need about 10 days at least to be able to actually push something through governance once we have a draft proposal ready. But I think you guys have done a great job in the incubation stage. You've given us a lot of detail. So I encourage everyone to go check out that discussion and add any final comments there. And then I think this is ready to move forward to the next stage, ideation, whenever you guys are ready to basically put together a draft proposal and then basically see.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, awesome. I think I'll definitely have to check out at least one of your documentaries before making a final decision on this. So, which one do you recommend for a documentary? If we're
Jerry will send you a link to his new one.
Yeah, that's the one. I mean, it's we've worked on smaller stuff that hasn't had this big distribution. The documentary series that I've worked on, 900 series, I think I put the link to where you can watch that. It's available streaming now. So that's more, I guess, the technical side of stuff. And then all the movies that are on my IMDb, you can stream in different places. The big one is the one that I just mentioned, Behind the Card, and that one we can't release much of yet until we've got a final agreement signed with our distribution company. That would be the one that I would want people to see because it's the biggest, right. The best. It's got Steve Aoki in it, and Raiders, and a couple sports stars in it. We interviewed the head of the companies, Panini, and some of the grading companies. So it's the biggest and best and most similar to what this will be. Unfortunately, I can't release anything of it yet because it's still in the legal team working out the details for it. But you can see the poster for it and who's in it and synopsis and stuff on IMDb right now. And as soon as it is finalized and they can release it, the trailer and the rest of it, I'll certainly do that.
Oh yeah, I'll definitely watch the trailer.
CMM Digital Space, that's the website, cmmdigitalspace.space.
Yeah, cmmdigital.space is my production.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you guys again so much. Best of luck with the current film that you guys are wrapping up, and best of luck on the governance process. Look forward to reviewing your